All right, guys. Well, welcome to our first. We're kicking off the concurrent sessions here with a good one. You're in for a treat. This is the Legacy in Motion panel. Whoop, whoop, that's it. So we have three wonderful representatives of different community land trust organizations, African Nova Scotian led, all in the big HRM territory, but operating in very different contexts and different stages of their journeys. So I think it'll be a very fruitful discussion. And what's better is we have a really wonderful facilitator with us today. It's Senator Wanda Thomas Bernard. Let's give a round of applause. Why not? So Senator Bernard is the first African Nova Scotian woman to be appointed to the Senate of Canada. Okay, give that a round of applause. I can't. She's representing the province of Nova Scotia and her hometown of East Preston. Senator Bernard champions issues impacting African Canadians and people living with disabilities. She's particularly invested in human rights, employment equity, and mental health. Through her involvement in community projects, her social work career, her time at Dalhousie School of Social Work, and now her work in the Senate, Senator Bernard has maintained a deep dedication to social justice and racial justice. She advocates for reparations for historical and continued anti-Black racism impacting the lives of African Canadians. So thank you for all your work, Senator. And I'll actually invite you to the stage and I'll briefly introduce each of the panelists and then we'll get underway in the discussion. So welcome. We're a little ad hoc in the blocking cues, so bear with us here. So first, I mean, I don't have anything too formalized written, so I'll speak from my heart here. First, we have Trina Morton. So this inspiring young man is leading the new Roots Community Land Trust in the north end of Halifax, which is an amazing neighborhood. A lot of African Nova Scotian history in there, a lot of displacement happening at the same time. So Trina will talk a little bit about his work and his project and what's brought him to organizing a community land trust there. So fantastic. Second, we have Miss Sunday Miller, very impressive individual. I really look up to her. She is one of the property consultants with Akoma currently, helping working with Miss Veronica Marsman to develop permanently affordable housing for Black households. But she has a long career. She was leading the Africville Heritage Trust for many years as well. Very respected individual, and we're happy to have her here today. And lastly, the Messiah. The one they said would come. No, it's Mr. Curtis Wiley. Yes, yes. We love him. He probably doesn't need too much of an introduction, but you know, he is one of the driving forces behind Upper Hammonds Plains Community Land Trust. He's also very active with the Canadian Network of Community Land Trusts, having just served as our treasurer for a few years. So big thanks and gratitude to Curtis for all he does here locally, but also at the national level. All right, and I'm just here. I was just here to introduce everybody. So Senator Bernard will be offering some remarks before facilitating a discussion between these guys. So thanks so much, everyone, for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me to be a part of this and to be the moderator for this wonderful panel. So it's really great. So good morning to all of you. And as you know, and as you certainly heard from Dr. Jones this morning, community land trusts, it's not just about bricks and mortar. Really, it's about land, but it's also about legacy, and it's also about liberation and empowerment and connection and connectedness. And it's more than a model for affordable housing. It's a movement. It's a movement rooted in social justice. It's a movement that's rooted in dignity. And it's a movement that's rooted in the collective power of communities to shape their own futures. And just hearing the information this morning about the founding of community land trusts in the African American community and knowing the history, you know, following from the civil rights movement, and then thinking about here in Canada, you know, it's about our ability and capacity to shape our own future, our ability and capacity to take control back. So thinking about Hogan's Alley, rather, in Vancouver, Little Jamaica in Toronto, or any folks from those groups here? Yes, wonderful, wonderful. So when you think about, and then the work that's happening here, so we heard about the marsh, and now we're going to hear about these three HRM groups. But what do they all have in common? These trusts allow communities to own land, to collectively own land, ensuring that homes remain affordable, not just in the moment, but forever, for generations to come. And they protect us against speculation. They preserve our cultural heritage, but they also foster economic resilience. I come from the community of East Preston, and I was so traumatized when we were forced off our land. So at the end of this, I'm going to read a poem that I wrote about it a few months back. But the importance of community land trusts goes deeper. And they are truly a response to systemic barriers, the dispossession of land, the exclusion, the absolute exclusion from wealth building opportunities that those of us from the African Nova Scotian community know all too well. But they offer us, these community land trusts offer us a pathway forward, a pathway to healing, a pathway to empowerment, and a pathway to generational wealth that is rooted in community, that is rooted in cooperative economics, not capitalism. So we're going to hear from three outstanding leaders in this space in the African Nova Scotian community. So to that end, I will now go over there and take my seat and get started. I thought I'd lost the mic. So let's start. How do I navigate my paper? Thank you. Now I'm on the right page. So thank you all for being here. We really appreciate you being willing to share with this audience. When I think about the title of the theme of the conference, Gaining Ground, and I know each of you have been sort of very much rooted in that work. So I'd like to start by asking you all to talk about you and your connection to the community land trust model. What brings you to this space? Why don't we start on my far right with you. What did she call you, Curtis? The Messiah. We're going to start with the Messiah.
Yeah. Yeah, you hear that, guys? The Messiah.
AKA Curtis Wiley.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You know, that's a really powerful question. So I think that, you know, my experience through my career has contributed to that. And then, you know, after just reflecting on all of the community work, and I think growing up with this, having this place, this which is Upper Hammonds Plains, and really not understanding the value of having a place until much later, right? That I always have a place where I can go, that I always have, you know, family and community that I can go, and not everyone has that. And it's something that I really took for granted. It's actually quite rare to have a community like ours. I think in North American society, really. I was drawn to the community land trust model over time, right? I began my career working in housing and delivering home repair assistance. And through that work, I, discovered that there were people that were living in homes that they didn't have clear title to. And then later, the province launched the Land Titles Initiative, and I knew specific families that would need this kind of support in order to access government programs and services. And so I joined the Land Titles Initiative. And that's when I really, dug into and started to look at title precarity in African Nova Scotian communities and, the geographical context in which African Nova Scotian communities exist. And I thought, there is so much land in our communities because of how African Nova Scotian communities were settled, right? Our ancestors were sent to these remote areas to be away and kind of disappear from society. And today I thought, I hope that we can create a mechanism whereby we can assert a communal interest in some of these lands so that we can steward them for communal benefit because there's systemic disinvestment from our communities, and so we can't just wait for these things to be done for our communities, and then of course added to that is decades of advocacy in our communities and resilience. So I thought we could do this thing. And so it's through all of those practical experiences through my career that I was drawn to the model, and aside from that deep community rootedness and a sense that I want to protect this place and all places where African Nova Scotians are from.
Thank you, Curtis. Let's hear from Sunday now.
Yeah, I can't honestly say that it was a deliberate decision to get involved with community land trusts. Ultimately, I think I believe in people in general and in their abilities and what they bring to the table. And my history has been community development, community economic development, people development. I've done it internationally. I've done it here at home. And I mean, and that's part of the reason I was involved with Africville. It was the development of something that was important to the Black community. I believe in my people. I believe I believe that we are the most creative and innovative people on the planet. Unfortunately, it's our being able to come together and work together, because I believe if we could do that, we would change the world, not just for ourselves, but for everybody. And so because of my skills, in business and economic development, business development, when I was approached by Veronica, I mean, she'd been after me even when I was at Africville to come and help. And eventually when she asked me, and we'd just gone through COVID, and when you go through COVID, you start thinking differently. Like, what am I doing? And am I really having an impact? And when she approached me about coming and helping her at Akoma, I thought, okay, I've got these skills and abilities. I can help with community development. I can help with personal development. I can help her move things forward. And at Akoma, we have the blessing that we have the land. It wasn't taken from us. You were able to hold on to it for over 100 years. And so I went there with the idea of what's the vision, what's the dream. We talk about creating generational wealth. And I think that's a great term, but there's an awful lot of education that has to go on to actually understand what generational wealth is. And it's not just having a home. It's all the other knowledge that you have to have that's associated with that. The understanding of finances, the understanding of economics. What is the system that you're living and working in that is not for you? How can you take your own creative and innovative thoughts to create a different system that will enable you to support and thrive and create that mindset for your younger ones. So generational wealth isn't just money. It's your thinking. If you can change your thinking, if you can develop who you are, you will never be at the mercy of a system that doesn't support you. And so part of my role is assisting Veronica, who's a visionary, who's a hard worker. And I'm just sort of her appendage on the side. Like, Dwight, you know this is so. What she can't do, I do. What she doesn't want to do, I do. What I don't want to do, I don't do. I mean, but I know what my giftings are. But I'm in the Community Land Trust because I look at the African Nova Scotian communities. We've got land. If we can build on our land, our way, for us, it will make a difference. And not just economically, but in the minds of the children who don't know how to dream and don't have a vision. And that's the ultimate thing. We need to create that. And I think that's what the Community Land Trust can do.
Creating a dream and a vision. I want to come back to this vision. But before we do that, we'll hear from you, Trino, as the youngest person on this panel, and maybe one of the youngest people in leading Community Land Trust. Tell us what brings you to this.
Thankfully, I don't talk long. I was told
What are you saying, Trino?
I was told by yeah, by an Indigenous elder. I don't say much, but my words are valuable. But in short, for me, the work started in a way as a passion project. I knew I wanted to do something in community for as long as I can remember. My bio always said to use my education to counteract gentrification in community. And I was asked to go on a James Walk because I did my undergrad in planning. I did my master's in urban planning. So I present and speak a lot at planning conferences. I met a planner from Toronto who came back the following summer and invited me to do a James Walk starting in community, ending at now the bottom of North Lyard Lane, where the Cogswell redevelopment is taking place. And she challenged me to get A&S land ownership. And I just took the challenge on, and we talked about different planning tools, and I landed on a CLT because of Curtis and the success I saw those folks having. At the time, I believe they were a year and a half into the process, and they already got rezoning in their community, something I still say should just be a standard in communities. If you're coming and building developments that are going to going to just change community for the worse, or just change community in general. You should have some say from the community in those decisions. In 2019, when I was working at the city, it was kind of the same thing. I was 21 and I still had the foresight at the time to know to bring community leaders into those discussions that are going to impact community for generations to come. But it just never happened. And when I graduated from my undergrad, I had a chance to go back to the city, but I chose not to. And I went the nonprofit route because my thing was always to have impact on the ground right away with community. And for me, it first started with the Velo building being built across from my local library. It used to be, and I always remind people, it's not just land dispossession or property dispossession, it's the memories that go along with it. Where the building sits, it used to be a gravel parking lot in a grass field. And I just remember that like little patch of grass was where my mom walked me through going up to Kennard Street daycare. It was through like the parking lot of a church that was since torn down and like built on. They expanded the building. So it was just things like that. And I always remind people, and I know some folks here might know, in my, I think like 23 at the time, my 23 years of living in Uniacke Square, the only renovations I really saw done was the windows going from like wood to like a laminate or something like that. And since then, they, with the Velo building and other, just more gentrification happening in and around community, especially on Creighton Street, we started to see just things we wouldn't see in the past. Good things, actually, like we got a new playground built by Canadian Tire and Jumpstart, replacing our old one. We got the siding redone in our community, and we got Uniacke Street repaved. And I just remember the conversation being with my mom and elders and folks, it's not long until a forced eviction comes because they don't do anything positive or to uplift community. And my whole goal with this work, I've seen a lot of advocates from Urban Carvery, Melinda Day, et cetera. And just over the years, and for me, just I've seen limited change. And I know just switching to urban planning, going that route, learning the intricacies of planning. The only way to have impact is being in those meetings, being in those council meetings, et cetera. And for me, it was just a matter of bringing community together, ANS groups together. I believe you both were at the first meeting we had, and there's always, because our big ask was for Parcel D to be gifted to us in the Causeway redevelopment because of the ANS community that was displaced from there. Thousands of people in my community, Mulgrave Park and other ANS communities, they only prioritize family. So a lot of folks were forced to move beyond. And like new communities, that's where New Roots came from. Our long name is North End Halifax, New Roots Community Land Trust. But like new communities, we just wanted to establish new roots like we were forced to do in my community of Uniacke Square, Mulgrave Park, and just kind of reestablish roots where we formerly were displaced from. And that's kind of how the work started.
Wow.
Mhm.
And you said you didn't say much?
Yeah.
I try not to.
You obviously have a lot to share.
It just gets tiring. It's just discouraging. I feel like out of the folks doing the CLT work, I'm the only one who, I feel like the only one doing, out of the folks doing CLT work, so I'm the only one doing it full time, and constantly trying to save community gets tiring, trying to convince funders why this work is important. And it's much more about land and land possession, or it's about, just like Sunday said, building capacity and community. And I live by two quotes: information changes situations, and to do something that's never been done, you have to, or to get something that's never been done, or do something that's never been done, you have to like create something such as the CLT or innovative processes. Because like I said, throughout the past, I've seen a lot of advocates and stuff like that, but not a lot of motion. And I know you have to go through those official channels, and that's what I'm hoping to do, and just trying to quantify the need in community. So it's not just me crying wolf on behalf of community. I know how important that is, but just a lot of need for the work that we're doing.
Mm.
If I may, I hear you, Trino. You know what I mean? I want to tell you that I hear you. And I know how challenging it is in the beginning. And you're facing challenges that I didn't face, right? And I talked in my, when I was in my opening about having lands, right? Trino isn't afforded that kind of opportunity, right? And we're talking about the hyper localization of Upper Hammonds Plains and other ANS communities. Well, Trino's community's already been dispersed and displaced, right? So I hear you, and I recognize the challenges that you face. And I'm just so excited for us to be able to partner together in the future. But I think it's really important for you to hear that, and that be recognized, and us recognizing that is really important.
I appreciate it.
And also to recognize that part of the reason you don't have the land is because where you are is in the economic heart, and they don't want you there.
Yeah, I'll try not to talk too much, but for me, no, the last thing I'll say about the work specifically is, for me, it's, and whenever I tell new people, new funders, community members trying to learn about the work, it's just filling the gaps of HRM, of the municipality, what transition housing was supposed to be. There were supposed to be educational job opportunities, economic opportunities. They never materialize, which is why we have 6th and 7th generations families still living there. And my hope is, with the financial literacy program and other programs we're developing, the municipality eventually sees the work that we're doing as valuable, and hopefully wants to partner and just creates the systems that should have been put in place from the beginning.
That's good.
Yes. You know, it's painful to hear your story. And we know the history is painful. You know, we're thinking about the history of the displacement of people from Africville and the fear that rippled to every other Black community in the province, and certainly in HRM. Because I remember at the time, and I was a kid, but I remember at the time thinking, if this could happen to Africville, it could happen to Preston. So what are we doing to ward against it? And I see we're still fighting some of the same battles. And so when I think about the vision, and Sunday, you referenced vision, I wonder if each of you could talk a bit about the vision that you have, the vision that the organization you're with has, and what you need to bring that vision to reality. You know, I always say that one of the things about racism and anti-Black racism in particular is that it teaches us not to dream. And I think you've sort of intimated that community land trust is a way of teaching our people, our young people especially, how to dream again. So share the vision. Sunday, we'll start with you. Share the vision and what you need to bring that vision to reality. What do you need from different sectors?
So Akoma has 320 acres of land. And what they want to do is to build a vibrant community. It's not just housing, right? You want gas stations. You want pharmacies. You want grocery stores. You want libraries. You want all the things that a regular good community would have. Arts theater, sports facility. And the challenge, you know, that's the vision, and it's a great vision. But in order for that vision to happen, number one, we don't have the infrastructure. And when the government was funding infrastructure, we weren't ready to apply for funding for infrastructure. And now we are ready, but infrastructure isn't on the table. And even though we do talk about EDI, and if you were going to look at it through that lens, then you would say, okay, well, they weren't ready, but they're ready now. So let's do what we need to do to give them the infrastructure so that they can start building and creating community, especially when they talk about the need for housing and density. So the challenge we had, we built some deeply affordable homes, but because we don't have infrastructure, each home had to have 10,000 square feet around it. And that meant we could not create the density that was needed, which meant we could not provide more homes for people from the community that needed it. So there has to be some, there has to be some recognition that if we want to do the work, then the government has to come alongside to help and support. We also have had the benefit of a development company that's come alongside to work with us, which has been very helpful. And they've also been very helpful in hiring people of African descent so that they can develop the skills necessary for construction and development. You know, it's almost like we have our hands in too many pots because we don't have the resources. It's like Dr. Jones was saying, there are no staff. There's very few staff at Akoma, but we're working on a number of different projects all at the same time. And we don't have the staff because we can't get the funds to hire more people. And so there's a need, you know, for that. And when we say, okay, what other things do we need? We've got municipal, we meet with HRM on a regular basis because we're dealing with zoning issues. And so we've got that. And then there's the provincial piece, and then there's the federal piece. And honestly, I believe that based on the historical significance of the communities in Nova Scotia, our longevity and the impact we've had in Canada, there should be some federal recognition and money specifically put aside for the development in Nova Scotia of the African Nova Scotian communities. And the fact that there is no recognition of that is still just an indication that we do not care. And I think, I guess, was it Lynn who made the comment about when they're talking about the housing crisis? For who? Because there's always been a housing crisis for us. The Black loyalists, their homes, they were holes in the ground. That's a crisis. It's always been for us. And so, you know, but there's never been any interest in that. So part of our vision is to create a community that's beautiful, that people are going to want to come to. but we also want to educate our people. Because one of the things that I have become aware of, people don't understand how much it costs to develop. And people will come in and say, well, you know, would 20 million be enough to develop the 320 acres? And then I laugh and I say, we're not even going to get a soccer field with a track field around it for $20 million. So there's a real serious challenge around understanding the cost and the timing around things. And then there's the other aspect that we also struggle with, because when we interact with people, our housing, for example, Fairfax is transitional. It's not supposed to be forever. But when we interview and speak to people, they don't have a dream. They don't have a vision, and they don't know how to dream. And you have to try and pull things out of them. And it breaks my heart to think, if you can't dream, you can't teach your children to dream. And if you can't teach your children to dream, where are we going to be? So there's so much that needs to be done. And a lot of it is internal. And when I say internal, it's within families. How do we help people to love themselves, believe in themselves, and pass it to their children so they can grow? And so there's, you know, we're running like crazy over here on this side to try and get, you know, commercial buildings in place, long-term care, housing, sports facility, an arts center, seniors housing, you know, and all of these things. And yet we're working and trying to help people who don't have the ability to dream, which means that they have more of a victim mentality than a mentality of, I can do this and I have self-agency. So when we talk about what do we need to do, there's so many sides that we need to work on. And I look at it this way, it doesn't have to be everybody. We just need a handful of people who are willing to come together, work together, support one another, and model how to dream, model how to move forward, model how to be different, but not in that in your face and negative. Just put your head down and let's do it, and show them how to fight strong and clear with intelligence, with critical thinking, with good planning and strategy. And I don't know, does that answer the question? I mean,
I think what you've certainly highlighted, you said not everyone has to be involved, but I heard you say everyone has to be involved. There's room for everyone. So there's room for every level of government, but there's also room for us in communities. There's room for us to be engaged and work on our families.
Yeah.
And so there is room and need for us all to be involved and engaged in the changed agenda.
Mhm.
But let's hear from you now, Trino. What's the big vision and what do you need to get there?
The big vision, ultimately trying to buy some housing stock in community. I think of a recent example where a gentleman sold his house a few years ago for $300,000, and now it's being sold. They did renovations and it's $969,000. And even more discouraging, we tried to purchase a home recently. A gentleman was selling it for under market value, but when we did the tour of the site, another private developer came with us and he put an offer in that night. So that's what we're dealing with in community. So I say that to say the vision is ultimately to save what housing stock is left, but I ultimately remind people that's where we're displaced to and not where we want to be forever. Also, but my big vision, like Sunday was saying, is just equity firstly. Just a lot of problems in community. I always go back to the George Dixon Center, a municipality-owned community center that has no air conditioning in the gymnasium. So much so, I'm epileptic. I have heat-induced seizures as opposed to light-induced seizures. So a few years ago, I had a seizure in that gym because all we have are whatever fans are available in the George Dixon Center, and cracking the door and hoping for the best. So that's something. I always remind folks how we have I had 5 originally, 5 basketball courts in community, all like 5 minutes at most from one another. And it's it's bad enough. That's the only real. It just like Sunday was saying. It kind of just shows how undervalued we are by the municipality. That's the only real future they see for us. We also have a music studio in community, only one of those. And I say 5 originally for the basketball courts because it started with 5. And another one was built by a youth group actually through an initiative they did at Hope Blooms. They sold lemonade in the summer and raised money. They also did the same thing with hot chocolate in the winter. And they were able to build a new court right in community, and that's only because of the lack of maintenance on the existing courts in community. So it's like that's the only real future they see for you, and they won't even do anything to maintain those in community. And like I said, like I always go back to just what community was supposed to be, and I just think about, like I said, just kind of building that equity in time. Hopefully, like I said, the municipality sees the value in the work, and we can create meaningful partnerships that way.
You know, you just highlighted some of the most basic issues.
2020, 2025. And another vision
It
for
shouldn't
me.
be an issue.
That's what everyone keeps telling me, but they still are. And it was an issue last year when I spoke on it, and the year before that, and nothing has changed. And I'm sure folks at the municipality would have heard that story by now, but still nothing has changed. But ultimately, just want to show community that they're valued, but the youth especially. Because like I said, they don't see a lot for themselves outside of basketball or entertainment and stuff like that. Thankfully, we have stuff like Hope Blooms in community, but even that's white led, and thankfully it's a successful organization. But it's just funny to see how that's a successful organization, but all the ANS groups trying to do good work for a community are either underfunded or typically just often underfunded. Or even looking at the school, Joseph Hall Elementary and community itself, and how I think it was 2016 or something like that, a community group that was formed by friends of mine. They brought me into it. We did the Creighton Street painting. We brought community together, hired a local artist, Marvin Nolligan, who's done work in the Commons now, and he did community engagement to inform it. And essentially, it was a Black woman with braids and her hair like grew fruit, and it represented like the vitality of community, and just kind of talking about like Black mothers, etc. And what he did was an outline of the mural, and everyone from youth to adults, they got to walk around and paint different sections of it, and everyone just felt as if though they were a part of it. The reason we did that was there was no, for whatever reason, there was no speed bumps around my elementary school. There was, whenever you go to the South End and white neighborhoods, there's speed bumps in the communities, let alone around their schools. But for whatever reason, there wasn't for us. So we did that mural as a traffic calming effort, and it lasted for, I think we got to revitalize it once. And by the time I came back from like my first year of university, it was paved over in the municipality. They gave us those speed bumps, but at the cost of the mural we put together, and we raised donations to hire local artists to come and perform, paying for the paint, etc. And like I said, I was away at school at the time, but the community group, the youth in the community group re-engaged the municipality, and the only thing they offered to pay for was the paint. So it never did happen again. And that's something else the CLT is trying to make happen again. So yeah.
Okay, I want to come back to something that you said, but I appreciate you just highlighting the barriers, because Dr. Jones talked about barriers in terms of the community land trust, but they're so different in each community. But anyway, I want to come back to that. Let me ask Curtis to weigh in on the vision piece, and then we'll go on.
Sure. Well, my dreams have come true, quite honestly, this year. But I always say that, you know, my vision for our communities is Wakanda, like from Black Panther, right? And I always kind of end my presentations with an image of Wakanda, because I believe that our communities can be amazing places that are technologically advanced, that have the infrastructure, that, you know, restore industry and the proceeds of that are invested into the residents and the descendants to increase their overall well-being, and that folks in our communities don't want for things in the same way that they perhaps do today. So that's my real vision, right? That we are able to create communities that look like that and that celebrate our unique cultural experience and identity here in Canada, and that they're looked to as pillars of what Canada can produce. Like, I'm not just talking about Nova Scotia, right? Because I believe our communities are that special and ought to be celebrated and reflected in that way. Some things that I think will help us get there. I think, we have proven that in Upper Hammonds Plains that we can, create compelling applications that can match and compete with any other developer's application when it comes to development. So long as we have the right partners around us that are supporting us. And I think that mix of partnership with that rootedness in community is what will help us to be successful. I think that there's a conversation about trade-offs that we certainly have to have, because I think sometimes as communities we're focused on having the perfect project with all the partners that look like us and everyone gets it and we're all meeting miraculously and coming together, but that's not always how things happen. And so we were able to create transformation by accepting those trade-offs and seeing our vision for our community as the end goal and projects leading to that type of realization. I think that in someone's comments this morning, they were talking about support from all levels of government for our project, but that's not true. We only got support from the federal government. We did not get support from the province or the municipality for our project yet. So I think that those things need to be made clear. Despite this, historic project, we couldn't garner investment or interest from certain levels of government, which is unfortunate. And it just feels like we have to work so hard to prove that these projects are actually serious, right? And I could only chalk up the facing that barrier to the I guess the uncertainty that this project would actually happen, right? Or that we could deliver such a project of this scale. And it's that stuff that's challenging for us in our communities, right? That, other organizations can walk into these rooms and get investments and all of that stuff. And we have to work 10 times harder just to prove that we're able and worthy to also be able to deliver these types of projects. But we're proving that that can happen. And I hope that our partners at these levels will move with a sense of urgency that will meet the situation that we are dealing with right now, right? We're talking about how profound these experiences are and how great, how amazing some of these innovations are that we're coming up with, but not everyone is meeting this moment with a sense of urgency that it ought to be receiving, right? So that we can propel our movement forward. And so that's a really big piece. And it does get tiring to have to advocate for, remedies to some of the barriers that we face. And why can't folks look at those things and be driven to find solutions that remove barriers to help us get farther faster? That's kind of where we're still facing some struggle, but we have really special things that we get to pour in now that are so positive. So it's really exciting to be able to learn in all these areas. But I think those are some things that we're still seeing and dealing with that aren't necessarily being portrayed accurately.
Could I
Oh,
could I make a, because I just, when Curtis was talking, I thought about Africville. So that was 2012 when I was there, 2011, 2012. And I don't know, maybe 2013 or so, I actually started talking about Africville becoming a CLT. And there was no interest whatsoever. Now, I don't know whether it was because the apology had just been made, but in my mind, or maybe it was because of the amount of land I was wanting to be considered, because I wanted what was left of what was there right down to its McIntosh Street. you know, that whole area to be identified as a community land trust. And it was like doors were just slammed in my face. Yeah. And so, I mean, it's the municipal situation, community land trust.
Yes, yes. So I wanted to just lead by saying thank you for speaking truth to power, because I think we certainly heard here today that you had support from every level of government. And the fact many of us, so many of the people who were here earlier will leave with that understanding. And so it's important to put the full story needs to be told. And you know, I mean, congratulations on the work you've done.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you for highlighting just how hard it is, you know, just to get to that space. And just hearing you talk about how we have to continually prove ourselves and we have to work so much harder. I mean, what does that sound like? It's what we've always had to do for generations. It's been part of the story, part of what we've had to do. I know this isn't on my script, but I'm going to jump off the script. And I'm thinking, you know, we have a silent audience that's sort of just listening. And so I'm going to ask them one more question. And while I'm doing that, if any of you have any questions, I'm going to give you an opportunity to ask questions. Okay, I'd like to engage you a bit more than silent witnessing. So I've heard a little about the African Nova Scotian housing strategy, and I'd like to know more about that. And so, Trino, let's start off with you on this one. Tell us about that strategy, and you know, what do you want people to know about it?
For me, I know Curtis and Sunday were more involved. I was in school at the time, so I attended meetings when I could, so they can speak to it a lot more in depth. But for me, I know it's a successful case study for me that we're going to be drawing on. We're currently in partnership with NSCC to do a housing strategy ourselves, or a housing needs assessment ourselves. So I'm going to be drawing on that. I know I had a few key statistics that I were going to say, but I can't remember them specifically. But it goes back to what I said earlier, just kind of quantifying the need of community. So it's not just one individual crying wolf. And I feel like that's why documents like these are so important. And like I said, for me, I can't speak to it as in depth like the creation of it, but I know the finished product is going to act as a successful case study that we're going to draw on, creating our questions, et cetera.
Okay, thank you. Curtis, you seem ready to speak to this.
Yeah, I wanted to not to jump in on you there, Trino. The African Nova Scotian housing strategy is a project that we've all been working on for years. And that project also hasn't been easy to deliver. And Ms. Bernadette is here. She's on the steering committee along with Sunday and I. And we started that project in 2021, I want to say. I had just come back from the north and jumped right into this project with them. And over those years, we built an Lanksy's here who worked on that project and others. And we did conduct the first race-based housing study of its kind.
Provincial.
Provincial in scope. And we did that all as volunteers. A lot of what we do as volunteers, and that culminate, I guess, ended in the culmination of the creation of this, provincial African Nova Scotian housing needs assessment, and a strategy, and a what we heard report, and the formation of a new organization called the Nova Scotia Black Community Housing Council, which is stewarding the implementation and the delivery or the actioning of the 58 actions within that strategy. So, the idea is that we can now look to this quantitative study to quantify the gap in adequate housing or housing precarity for specifically African Nova Scotians in Nova Scotia, and use that for applications for CMHC or others, because often that's a gap, right? That we don't have that specific research. And the strategy is great because it offers a positive action plan for us to be able to create solutions that address that one of which is a community land trust strategy. Surprise! And so, using it, really focusing on this mechanism as a way to create transformation and liberation for African Nova Scotian families.
Yeah, and one of the other great things is that every community can actually go to the strategy, go to the information and see what is the housing need and situation in their region. And so it just makes it that much easier for them to be able to move forward, to make progress. And the other thing is too, is that we wanted, it's like we wanted to bring everybody together. So, part of it is having a hub where anything that you need to know about housing or development, there's a central place. You don't have to try and figure out how to do it, and you've got people who can assist you. The challenge we've had is that we made our first presentation to government in 24, but we only actually had our launch of it in 25. And we did it in 24 because we wanted the government to come on board and support it, because what we created was based on a report that they had put out saying what their needs were. And we addressed their needs and showed them how they could solve their problems. So it would, and we were showing them this is a win-win. We're showing you, because they made it very clear in their report what, that one of the situations was within the African Nova Scotian community. And so we showed them exactly how they could solve the challenges that they said that they wanted to solve. But no government agency at any level has come on side to support the strategy. They've given us some funding so we could start the community, the Black Community Housing Council. So we can sort of do some groundwork, but no one wants to actually link arms with us, because we actually requested 5-year funding, because we felt we would need 5 years to get some of the basic things in place so that we could actually start to grow and to develop. And so it's a challenge. So even when they say to you, it's like saying, well, if you can do this, or you can show me how I can solve this problem, I'm on board. And you show them how they can solve the problem. Well, I didn't really mean it. I like that. Oh, this is great. This is wonderful. And so that's kind of a little bit of the challenge, but it's an amazing strategy. And, so now we're at the spot of trying to start moving forward with that.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful. So are there any questions from people who are here? Yes. You come and get the mic. Oh, thank you.
Good afternoon, panel, or good morning. Thank you so much. I know that this work, my question is super light, so you guys get to live through this. The work of the CLT is real, it's deep, it's intentional, and has a lot of problems around it, and it ain't us. I'll just say it like that very clearly, without offense, hopefully. With that being said, because the work is so heavy, how do you replenish yourself to stay doing this great work?
That's a great question. Can you tell us who you are, though, please?
Oh, sorry. My name is Damon Mason. I'm from the U.S.
Welcome.
Oh, there's somebody. I hear a pop. Okay. So with that being said, my name is Damon Mason. I'm with Rondo Community Land Trust, and this is our second family here. So my executive director, Makia Griffin, could not be here. So we had to send somebody from the family to support our other family. So that's why I'm here today.
Well, thank you for being here, and thank you for your question. That's a great question. Okay, who'd like to start?
I can say that
Go ahead.
It's great to have you here, Damon. And we met them on the Liberated Land Trust Tour, and it's just incredible the connection that we've been able to maintain. I don't do a good job of that. You can ask folks in the back over there. but it is a challenge, right? I think that sometimes I say to folks, I'm like, it's time for me to just go back to the to the community and just like have a day. I feel like that really replenishes my cup. And not taking meetings in the evenings is a new thing for me. And not working in the morning before work. So trying to set those boundaries is has been a challenge because we're so we're also passionate about the work that we're doing, but when there's nothing left to give, and the builders certainly understand, the afternoons are not good for me to meet because I'm already have dealt with a lot, and so things are pretty feisty. So it's like them folks that work with us, like learning, those things and appreciating those pieces is also helpful. Like instead of just continuing to like drive, things, being conscious about those things and wanting to, adapt to support those things, I think, and push people and recognize that, or, help you recognize that you need to rest is important. So I'm glad to have these people in my life.
And rest is resistance, right?
Right. And someone gave me that book.
Someone gave me that book too.
Right. I got through a few things.
There's a message there.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I mean, I'm tired now, so I think, it's because we had a wonderful summer, but it was like it was go, 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 go. And, I should have taken vacation in August and I had to cancel and should have had it this month and I haven't had it yet. And so, I mean, every day I start with quiet time, just before I get myself started, just to center myself. But then you have all of these things that are going on. So I'm also very good when I leave the phones off. I mean, only on the negative aspects of Veronica has my personal number too. So but I mean, I try to be very good to myself in that way, that when I'm gone, and I shut it down, because I look at it this way: there's always going to be more to be done than you can possibly do, and you can't do it all in one day. So, give yourself the rest that you need, and yeah.
Feel like you asked the wrong panel. It's something I'm still working on myself. Like I said, just doing this work full time. Even I was talking to Devin about it earlier. My convocation was June 10th. I celebrated that day, and it was kind of like back to trying to save community. So I don't celebrate long. I don't do work before work. I may answer emails, but like you both, I tend to work in the evening and just kind of because like someone, I did a walk recently through community, and like someone really articulately put it, it's not just work for me, it's very much my livelihood. I have my mom living in community, I have my sister living in community. You heard some of the stories I told earlier. My sister a few years ago had a mold exposure in her home, calling to get it fixed. But it wasn't until my nephew, who has very severe asthma, was hospitalized and she went to the news, that's when they came in and fixed it. So there's problems that still exist 2020 onwards in community that are very real and impact me very greatly. So still working on finding that balance and trying to like de-stress from work. But yeah, it's always top of mind for me.
Thank you. We'll take one more question. We have time for one more question. Oh, okay. I didn't see your hand.
She's been sticking her hand up right.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Bernadette Hamilton Reed. I'm an 8th generation African Nova Scotian, happy and proud to be here and among this panel of such esteemed speakers. Yes. And I want to give a shout out to Abigail, who's also part of the Nova Scotia, the housing strategy, I don't think, with the Black planning project. So thank you, Abigail, for your work. I'm the executive director for the African Nova Scotian Decade for People of African Descent Coalition. Big name, we're called DPED. We're like the little United Nations here in Nova Scotia. And our work is to help with advocacy. So my question to you is, how can we, as the Black community, support you more when you're here? When it's very sad to hear that you haven't had funding and support from the provincial and the municipal. And we had the mayor here this morning. He should be here right now. Why aren't, so we can attack him and say, why aren't you funding these people? Because that's what we do. That's what DPED does. We don't attack. We come very strategically to talk about why you are not supporting these initiatives. As you said, we can see what's happening in the non-African community. In all kinds of instances, they get stuff, they get the speed bumps, they get the new schools, they get everything, but yet we don't get what we need. So how can we as a Black community support you? How can we do more letter writing campaigns? How can we come together and focus on insisting on getting meetings? The House is going to sit next week Maybe we need to bring up some bills. Maybe we need to bring up some legislation. Maybe we need to be in their face and let them know that, especially with all the new land trusts that are created now, Upper Hammonds Plain, down the marsh, Weymouth Falls, you know, Lincolnville, Sunnyville's trying to do something. Our communities are trying to do something without the support of the government. The government needs to know they need to support these initiatives because we've been here for over 400 years. And as Dr. Lynn said, reparations does not always have to come in the form of money, but giving back, giving us the things that we need, human resources, as you spoke about, giving that planning money, giving that infrastructure. As Sunday said, we weren't ready for it, but we're ready now. We have a lot of groups that are ready now. We're smarter, we're better. We've always been smart, but we are now learning how to play the game better. And we also have the senator here who will bring things to the House if we ask her to. She's been very successful in bringing bills together that DPAD has asked, but we need to rally around our politicians, the ones that we know that will advocate for us, and let them know what our issues are. So I want to know give us some feedback as to how we can support you going forward.
I'll go quickly this time. I know a conversation we had with our district councilor, Virginia Hinch, thus far, and Sunday touched on it earlier, just legislation or representation and legislation for African Nova Scotians. I just know things not defined don't last, and until we're defining legislation, you always hear us in land acknowledgements, but that's the extent of it. Until there's legislation surrounding African Nova Scotians, there's going to be no distinct funding, et cetera. So that's been my big thing, and to have more advocacy or to have that brought to the House would go a long way.
I think one of the things that's needed is for the community, the members, the citizens of the community to speak up. You know, it's one voice, but then if you have thousands of voices and thousands of letters, and, you know, I think years ago, people were a bit more vocal, more active. I mean, we think of the civil rights movement and things like that. And so I think, you know, we have organizations, and maybe that's part of the challenge, that people are sitting back waiting for the organizations to do it. But the organization is one voice. The community is many. And I think we need more of the community members understanding what the situation is and speaking out.
Yeah, you raised a great point. You know, I spent a lot of time doing advocacy, really significant advocacy, and quite frankly, I'm just tired of it. So I now have other things I can focus on. So yeah, you know, I haven't been the same advocate, but at the same time, I think that's because, you know, I do have really amazing organization to focus on growing. And I think that will come, you know, we'll get back to that and sharing more about the hurdles and the things that we're still facing. But, and I think, you know, really being clear about what it is that we're seeking, number one, and having that unified voice from our community in particular, which would involve having support from the other organizations that are active in Upper Hammonds Plains. That's also something that we're focused on. But you know, the community's advocating right now for appropriate water infrastructure. There's so many different things, right? So it's just that's really the reason, is just being too tired and having other things to focus on. So, you know, perhaps we can resume conversations on how we can support each other and raising those issues, because I think it is important. But that's the reason why we really haven't been talking about those things as much. It just seemed fitting today to correct the messaging that's happening. You can see how easily that can be skewed, right, in one conversation. So.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all very much. You know, I'm a person that likes action items. And so a couple of things are coming to mind. One is the call for that recognition of African Nova Scotians as a distinct society. We've had 2 petitions go forward to federal government with the previous government. They landed and nothing happened. We have a new government. And from what I've seen from the speech from the throne, we're not a priority. So we have to make ourselves a priority. So maybe there's time for another petition. So that's one idea I want to throw out to you. Here's the second idea I want to throw out. I heard your chair say that next year you're in Ottawa, and there was a groan. That wasn't from me. So I was excited. So let me tell you why I was excited, because I was thinking, how can you harness being in Ottawa with ensuring that your voices are heard nationally? Make that happen. Make that happen. And if you invite me to something, I'll show up. I will show up. But we need to, your voice needs to be big and loud on the Hill. So develop a strategy, come up with some ideas of how you make that happen, because that's how you're going to get a stronger link for those federal dollars. Everyone and their dog does advocacy on the Hill. And we're very invisible in that work. So we need to make ourselves more visible. So to wrap up, I'm going to share with you my poem that I wrote back in April called Remembering Displacement. And I'll tell you why I wrote this poem. The last surviving member of my father's family died. He was the reason we were forced to leave East Preston. And my brother and I went to the funeral, and we hadn't talked a lot about the impact. We'd all had our feelings about what happened when we had to leave East Preston, but we hadn't talked about it as a family. And through that conversation, and I moved back to East Preston. My husband and I built a retirement home there about 20 years ago. So I've been thinking about retirement for about 20 years. Someone asked me once about burnout, how do you deal with burnout? And I said, I can't afford to burn out, I just recycle. So let me fill that out to the three of you. When you think about burnout, just think about how do I recycle myself, right? So after that conversation with my brother, I was moved to write this poem. And I call it Remembering Displacement. Because when I think about community land trusts, they really are about addressing displacement, people who are displaced. And these feelings run deep. So here it is. Home is sacred. Home is comfort. Home is familiar. Home signals belonging no matter what the circumstances. Home is home. I remember the sounds, the tastes and smells of home. I remember the rock. I remember the river. I remember the neighbors. I remember the smell of baked beans and fish cakes on Saturdays. I remember church and roast beef dinners on Sundays. I remember picking blueberries for hours on hot summer days and the anticipation of treats on grocery shopping days. Home is sacred. Home is home. But memories of displacement take up space in my head. The discovery of a deed that did not bear their names. Our parents trusted things to be okay, but Dad had died. We did not know that we were on borrowed time. I remember the moment that displacement became real. I remember the feeling of helplessness. I remember the feeling of hopelessness. I remember the feeling of abandonment. I remember the feeling of loss. I remember the feelings of anger and rage. I remember that anger and rage have a purpose. Anger and rage mask the fear. I remember that displacement caused so much fear. Fear of change, fear of losing all that was familiar, fear of losing all that was comforting. Friends, family, the rock, the river, friends, family. Fear that things would never be the same. Fear of displacement. We wanted to stay in our home, but the conditions steeped in ambition were not acceptable. The conditions were too painful to consider. Moving was our best option. Moving was our only option. Moving meant leaving the comfort of home. Moving meant leaving East Preston. Moving was our only option. Mama, Val, and I felt the weight of the family on our shoulders. We had to find a new home because moving was our only option. Moving to Dartmouth became our best option. We searched and searched and searched for a new space to call home. We knew that displacement was going to happen. We knew that moving was going to be traumatic for all of us. But voila, We found a new home. We found a new community. We made new memories. We made new friends. We created chosen family. We created a new normal. Some traditions from East Preston moved with us. Church and roast beef dinners on Sundays. Special treats on grocery shopping days. But some new traditions were also created. Blueberry picking became trips to the valley for strawberry picking. Walks to the river became walks to Sullivan's Pond. We adjusted to life in the city. We faced our fears. We survived displacement. We made a way out of no way in our new home. We created a new home after displacement and a new sense of belonging. But still, we remember displacement. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, everybody, for this really amazing panel discussion.